I think the biggest difference between the Eastern Conference this year and the Western Conference has to be the fact that the East is a lot more top heavy. I think the West has a good, 11 teams that truly expect to make the playoffs, and not only that, but have expectations of going into the playoffs and actually doing things like making it past the second round and whatnot. But when you look at the East, there's really about a couple championship contenders, true championship contenders. There's about, I'd say, like 5 other teams that are vying for that 3 seed. And then the rest are really just hoping for a play-in spot, or at the very least a playoff spot as well. But we're going to go ahead and get into the Eastern Conference predictions for 2023. And first off, we're going to start off with who I think will be in the last place in the Eastern Conference. So, 15th place, I have the Charlotte Hornets. And, the Hornets, I will give them this. They do have LaMelo Ball, and LaMelo Ball is really good. Like, I think he was injured last year, and people kind of forgot just how good he is. Granted, he's very much injury prone, so I understand the hesitations to really getting behind him. I think the debates between whether you'd prefer him and Anthony Edwards are about over. But LaMelo's really good. But the Hornets are not. I think they're going to be 15th in the East. In the 14th place, I think it's going to be the Washington Wizards. And this roster has more solid pieces than you may think. They did get Jordan Poole in the Chris Paul trade last year. This offseason, rather. They also have Tyus Jones, one of the better backup point guards in the league. And Kyle Kuzma played really well last year. Denny Avdija is a solid player as well. But the Washington Wizards have always been a team just with a lot of mercenaries, a lot of dudes that are good players by themselves, but they aren't really a cohesive unit. And without Bradley Beal, I really do not think that they have the talent to even make a play-in kind of appearance. Maybe they can be an 11 seed if the team doesn't fully embrace the tank and they try to compete more, but I think they would be better off fully tanking and fully sinking like a rock. So 14th place is where I have the Washington Wizards. The Orlando Magic's coming in at 13th in my standings. A lot of solid young players for the Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero is a very solid player. I've always liked Markelle Fultz as well. Jalen Suggs is a dude that I've always liked too. And, the Orlando Magic are definitely a team worth paying some attention to. I just think that at the moment, they're just a little bit too young to really factor into the Eastern Conference. Now, granted, if Paolo Banchero really does go off this year, and they have a lot of good performances from guys like Cole Anthony, from their rookie Anthony Black, from Gary Harris, and Wendell Carter Jr. continues to be solid. There are reasons for optimism in Orlando, and I think their ceiling is a 9th seed. If they make the play-in, even if they don't make the playoffs, I think that's a big accomplishment for Orlando. So 13th is where I have them, but they're a good, interesting young team that I do think is worth paying attention to. Another young team that I think is worth paying attention to, the Detroit Pistons. And they have a new head coach, Monty Williams, who did wonders for the Phoenix Suns. And he's coming into a very, very young roster. He has Cade Cunningham coming back from his injury last year. So the number 1 pick from 2021 is going to be making a return. So that is a very welcome sign for Detroit fans. They also just drafted Asor Thompson, the guard from Overtime Elite. And they also have Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey was drafted last year as well, and they have a lot of young parts too, but not Marvin Williams, but their head coach, Marty, he can do wonders with a young team. He did really good when it came to building up the Phoenix Suns, and that first season with the Phoenix Suns, even though they were an 11th seed, they had a really good trajectory. You could tell they were going on the up and up. So I think Pistons, they're going to be 12th this year. Their ceiling, like Magic, is the 9th seed. If they make the play-in, that should absolutely be a win for them. But I think they're going to fall short of it. They're going to be 12th place. The next team and the final team that does not make the play-in is the Toronto Raptors, coming in at 11th place. I do not believe in the Toronto Raptors. Somewhere my man Randy Milton is going crazy, rolling his eyes at that statement right now. I just do not know what the plan is with Toronto. They let Fred VanVleet walk without getting any assets for him. They were looking for trades for Pascal Siakam for the Atlanta Hawks in particular, but that trade never came to fruition, and Pascal Siakam's only got 1 year left on his contract, and it doesn't look like they're any closer to striking a deal. And even if they do strike a deal, what is the upside for this team? I'd say 8th seed. If Nick Nurse, if they upgrade from their coach, because they just fired Nick Nurse, and they can have that cohesion and they can kind of surprise people, I think their ceiling is an 8th seed. But Toronto, I just don't believe them. I don't know what their plan is, and I think that they should be trying to tank more than they actually are. But right now, I think they're going to go for the play-in, but end up being a lottery team anyway. So now we move on to the play-in teams, the 7th through 10th seed. And at the 10th seed, I got the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets last year were a much different team around this time of year. They had Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and things looked like they were a lot more on the up and up, despite all the drama going on with the team, despite the Kevin Durant trade rumors and whatnot. But coming into this year, yes, they're a lot younger. Yes, the chemistry is probably a lot better. I do like Mikal Bridges. I do like Cam Thomas. And they have a lot of young dudes, Cam Johnson as well. So the Brooklyn Nets, in terms of the vibes, should be a lot better. But the team itself, I do think they're going to fall a lot short from where they were last year. After the trade last year, when they traded Kyrie and Kevin Durant, they were a below 500 team, and I think there's a good chance that they can be that for this entire season. In the 9th seed, I'm predicting the Chicago Bulls. And the Bulls, they got talent, but I feel like the excitement for them is a lot lower than it has been these past few years. Now, a few positives. They still have DeMar DeRozan, and he's going to win you some games. They still got Zach LaVine. He's talented, so you're going to be able to win a few games with those guys. Carter. It was a point guard they just signed this year. Name just escapes me right now, but, with Alex Caruso and, the Carter, who they signed this year, both are really good defensive players, and both are guys that should be able to get to point guards at the point of attack. But I just don't think this team is going to amount to too much this season. Javon Carter, by the way, is the guy I'm talking about. Javon Carter from West Virginia. Yeah, he's a really good defensive player, and with him and Caruso at the point of attack, I think their point guard defense is really solid, but I don't think the team as a whole is very cohesive. They have talented players that'll get them in the play-in. Maybe they can make the playoffs. I think their ceiling is about the 7th seed, but I don't really see them doing too much. So, going into the 8th seed, I got the Miami Heat. And, man, it has been an offseason for the Miami Heat. They watched a good chunk of their role players go away to try to get Damian Lillard. Ultimately, it did not succeed, and they ended up losing some good role players for nothing, and they're probably just going to replace them with undrafted free agents. Now, despite that, I still think that there is a good chance they could be the 4th seed in the East. That wouldn't surprise me. And that's the power of Eric Spoelstra, ain't it? I like Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler in the regular season is a lot different than Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. And that's just a fact. Bam Adebayo is a good player. I don't know if that's good enough for him to really pull this team through, to really pull this roster through, to really threaten the rest of the Eastern Conference. Tyler Hero kind of has to be feeling some type of way after being shopped around all offseason. So, on paper, the Miami Heat should be an 8th seed in my opinion. They're probably going to be that 8th seed, that play-in team that no one wants to play against because Jimmy Butler becomes a top 5 player in the playoffs. But as of now, an 8th seed is where I'm predicting. And because I predict that, watch them go all the way up to the 4th seed and make me eat crow because that's what Eric Spoelstra can do. So, going into the 7th seed, the final play-in team, I have the Indiana Pacers. I like the Indiana Pacers. I think they have a fine roster. Tyrese Halliburton just got paid. 5 years, $250 million for Tyrese Halliburton. When you get paid that much money, the results have to come. He's been a dude that has a lot of potential for the past 2 years now. And he has the physical tools to be a really good two-way player on both offense and defense. Now he's got to really show it. Defensively, he hasn't really been the guy that a lot of people think he is. But offensively, he's still a really good playmaker. He's still a dude that can set the table for a lot of his teammates, a lot of the shooters on his teammates like Buddy Hield, like Benedict Mathurin, like Aaron Nesmith, dudes like Bruce Brown, who they just signed this year. And I think the Bruce Brown signing is really going to help them out just locker room wise because he was a dude that was a part of that Denver Nuggets team, and he's going to give that championship experience that the Indiana Pacers need, that playoff experience that they need. So I like the roster. I think the Pacers are going to be the 7th seed. Their ceiling is the 5th seed. Like, if these guys could really start breaking through, if the young dudes really start breaking through and playing better than you expect, then the 5th seed is possible for Indiana. But I have them going number 7. And now we get into the teams that are guaranteed into the playoffs, the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference. And at the 6th spot, I got the Atlanta Hawks. I would love to agree with my man Garrett and think that they're going to be a top 4 team. And if that happens, I would be very happy being wrong. But the reality is the Hawks last year, in the last 2 years, have been a play-in team. And this season, or this offseason rather, the only move that they really made, the only big move was trading John Collins away, signing Patty Mills or trading for Patty Mills, and then signing Wesley Matthews. They didn't really do much to this season that was an 8th seed last year. So, I can't really say that they're going to jump all the way up 4 entire spots in the conference. That being said, the Quinn Snyder effect will definitely be felt. And I've watched all the preseason games, and you can already see the ball movement is a lot better. The defense is a lot better. And, it may not be a huge jump, but I think that a 6th seed is very possible. Now, if Trae Young really gets off, if he really has that year that a lot of Hawks fans think he's capable of having, being the complete player that we think he is, a 2nd seed is very possible. I think that's the Hawks' ceiling. People do not understand just how good Trae Young is. And if he really gets off this year, that will make things easier for everybody. However, I think that the 6th seed is a much more modest expectation. Just don't make the play-in. Just don't have to play in the play-in. That's what Hawks fans want to see. At 5th place, we got the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks are a solid team, man. They are a good squad with a lot of chemistry. They don't have anybody with the upside of a Trae Young. So I think their ceiling is ultimately the 3 seed. I think that's where they're really going to, if they really come through together, if shots really go in, then they could be a 3 seed potentially. But I have them being a 5th seed. I think they're a slightly better regular season team than the Atlanta Hawks. They got Jalen Brunson, who was really good last year. Julius Randle's just a really good regular season player, and he's going to win them a lot of games. So RJ Barrett should come through for them. Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, who they just signed this year. Emmanuel Quickley, who should be a much better backup point guard. Like, this is just a roster with a lot of solid players, good chemistry, and I think it's going to propel them to being the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. Now, the 4th seed, the Philadelphia 76ers. And boy, what an offseason it has been for the 76ers. James Harden did not get the extension that he wanted, and he requested a trade very early in the offseason, and he did not get it. He is still on the team. He is talking crap about his general manager, and it is very possible that he may not be on the roster in opening night. So keep that in mind with these predictions. It may be possible that he does not start with the team. We probably won't know if he'll be with the team until literally 40 minutes before tip-off. But right now, despite all the drama going on, despite the fact that Philly didn't really make too many offseason moves to make their team that much better, they still have the reigning MVP in Joel Embiid. They still have Tyrese Maxey. Tobias Harris is a solid player himself as well. So I do think that they're going to be a good team. I don't think they're going to fall like a rock like some people think they will. Now, I do think their floor is the 7th seed. If this James Harden thing doesn't get resolved, if it messes up chemistry, then this could definitely be a spiraling season, a downward spiral for Philly. But I currently have them at the 4th seed. Their ceiling, in my opinion, is 2nd place. Because on paper, if James Harden was fully bought in, then this would no doubt be a top 3 team in the East. But with all the commotion going on, I think that the 4th seed is where Philly will ultimately end up. Now, going into the top 3 seeds in the East. Number 3, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I like Cleveland, man. Cleveland, I've liked them since they traded for Donovan Mitchell last year. I think that roster just really works well together. There's a really good mix of a good offense with good defense. Now, of course, last year, we know the memes that the lights were too bright, like Jared Allen said, and the playoffs did not go well. But with Donovan Mitchell returning, with Darius Garland being a year older, and Evan Mobley being a year older too, Jared Allen should be good. So I think Evan Mobley is the real swing guy here. If Evan Mobley could really live up to his potential, if he can really start to be a top 10 center in this league, maybe even top 5, then there's a good chance that that team could challenge for the number 1 seed, no doubt. But Cleveland is a really good team, and I think that the number 3 seed is what they're going to be. But the top 2 seeds, as we all know, Milwaukee and Boston. And who's going to be number 1? I don't think it's going to be Milwaukee. I think they're going to be the number 2 seed. Milwaukee just made the big trade for Damian Lillard, and there's a lot of excitement there. There is a lot of hype there for what him and Giannis Antetokounmpo can do. And I think they're going to be a really good team. I think they're going to be among the best teams in the East, especially once they really start to gel together. That being said, I think they're going to start off the year a little bit more rocky than people may think. Now, I think that Damian Lillard is going to have to start getting used to being a number 2 option, maybe even a number 3 option on certain nights. But once they kind of start getting it together, once they start gelling, I think that these guys are going to work really well together. And they're going to be the number 2 seed in the East, which means the Boston Celtics are going to be the number 1 seed in the East. Boston has been among the best teams in the East for a while now, since around 2017 when they drafted Jason Tatum. And this team should be the number 1 team in the East. They have traded for Kristaps Porzingis. They traded for Drew Holiday, the Damian Lillard stopper. So these guys have a bunch of depth. They have a good amount of high ceiling players. Jason Tatum is one of the best players in the league. And I think that they have the roster to be a championship contender, to finally even maybe break through and win a championship. But I think that the regular season is going to go really well for Boston. And I think that these dudes are going to be the number 1 seed. And that is my Eastern Conference predictions. Number 1, Boston Celtics. Number 2, Milwaukee Bucks. Number 3, Cleveland Cavaliers. Number 4, Philadelphia 76ers. Number 5, New York Knicks. Number 6, Atlanta Hawks. 7, Indiana Pacers. 8, Miami Heat. 9, Chicago Bulls. 10, Brooklyn Nets. 11, Toronto Raptors. 12, Pistons. 13, Orlando Magic. 14, Washington Wizards. Last place is the Charlotte Hornets.